Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, this is IDAGIO Live. This is Tuesday, so it must be Song and Beyond, a partnership between the Hampson Foundation, my foundation for song and cross-cultural understanding, and the IDAGIO.com streaming website, platform, which is incredibly exciting. And as you all know now, it is the place where classical music happens. If you don't know IDAGIO.com as a streaming platform, you do want to check it out. But that's kind of a stupid thing to say because otherwise you wouldn't be watching us. But yeah, that's not true. You could be on Hampson Foundation Facebook site. Now, when this is all over, you got to go check out IDAGIO.com. It is the most deep, wide river of classical music website and platform built by classical musicians for the understanding of listening to and getting into classical music. It's fun. You can make playlists. You can know it's on your iPad, your iPhone, your Android, is somebody going to come up with another instrument some of these days? We have iOS and Android, and I don't know, something. You can beam it in somewhere. It's a wonderful platform. We, of course, have the IDAGIO Live series, which has been going on since last March. Can you believe this? Every Tuesday, I have been regaling you with guests and fun things about song, and we have picked up such a wonderful momentum. I want to welcome all of you who have never been here and welcome you back if you've been here before, and thank you for following us. We're getting something like 4,000 or 5,000, sometimes 6,000 people checking out song and what that's all about on the Hampson Foundation Facebook website, as well as IDAGIO Live and the Vimeo. I mean, we're all over the place. It's great, great fun. Tonight is a wonderful night. It is February 2. We are officially launched into February 2021. But we all know that February is also African American History Month, which is one of the cool celebrations. One of the things we got right and are getting right. My guests tonight, as you can see here, are, first of all, I don't know, how many doctorates do you have, Louise? Doctor, professor, professor, doctor, professor, doctor. Well, if you would like to stand when I say this, that'd be okay too. Louise Toppin, University of Michigan, musician, singer, scholar extraordinaire, and becoming really a fun colleague and friend. I appreciate you so much what you do, and you've got so much to tell us. It's very exciting. And a completely new, very bright light of music on my horizon, which is, after all these years, you would think. Roderick Cox, wonderful to meet you, wonderful to get to know you, wonderful to be planning some projects, and you're an amazing bright light on the conductor horizon of our country and of the world, and it's a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to welcome you.
It's good to meet you too. I mean, I've known you, I suppose, not too long, but it's good to be here and to talk in this this specific forum.
We're gonna have some fun. We've got some quasi announcement to make, but also just some fun things to talk about. Louise, I want to start off with you. I want both of you to let everybody know where you guys come from, what you've done, and all that sort of stuff, as much as you want to talk. But you get to kick it off, not just because you're the lady in the group, but because you have a pretty special direct line to this whole phenomenon in the country called African American History Month. Go, all yours.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say first, thank you so much for having us on, and thank you for all that you're doing, because having platforms like this where we connect and meet new people. Roderick and I did not know each other, and at just one meeting, I am so happy to get to know him, and build more friendships and alliances as we all work on this thing we call music and singing and joy in the world. I grew up in Petersburg, Virginia. Ettrick, Virginia is the real name of the city. I was born in Ohio. But my connection is that my father was a historian at Virginia State University, and his area was Civil War and Reconstruction. And my father became known as one of the important voices in terms of providing access to real truths about African American history. He had the first television show in the United States on PBS in African American history in the 60s. I was actually on a couple of episodes as a child. I remember seeing one in which I'm standing in Jamestown and we're talking about the arrival of the slaves. And I guess I had to memorize the script because there were things I said and I look at the film and I know I don't know. And so someone fed me that, but it was wonderful that he included his children as a part of that. He
Fantastic.
was also on the National Parks Board with Lady Bird Johnson. He was appointed to it. So they were working on all of the historical sites throughout the country. And he was on Colonial Williamsburg, making sure that that perspective of plantations began to include African Americans. But one of the seminal achievements, I think those are important enough. And he was an author, he was a lecturer, he was all over the country. And whenever they said Dr. Toppin, that was who they were talking about, not me, the singer, for sure.
Well,
But
you picked up the mantle. It's all yours.
I have picked up the mantle because that's my research area as well.
Did he know you as Dr. Toppin? Did he get to see you become a doctor?
My father passed in 2004, so he and I he got to see me as a full professor at a university, and I became North Carolina's distinguished professor and teacher of the year, and he was Virginia's teacher. We were about the same time. We were both being honored by the governors of our states. But the thing that he did that people do remember most for, I think, is his work with the Carter G. Woodson Society, founded in 1915. He became, they founded Black History Week, and they founded that week to honor Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln in February. That was when their birthdays.
They have, it's like February 12th for Frederick Douglass and February 14th for, I mean, can you imagine? I wonder if they ever, never mind, chat about birthdays, you know?
Definitely. If you read the biography by David Blight on Frederick Douglass, they talk about the meetings between Douglass and Lincoln. So it's fascinating reading if you're up to the 900 pages or so that it is. But so that was why February was chosen as the week, and that specific week, that's why it was chosen to honor Black History Week, because we're honoring heroes. And then in the 70s, my father was the national president of this organization, and the organization wanted to expand it, saying that, okay, we've had a week, we need to encourage people to think about Black history not only in a week, but think about it throughout a month. And the eventual goal was, of course, to think about it throughout the year. So it's just expanding the possibilities. It was never meant to limit it to a month. So he led that legislation to lead it to a month. And that's when it happened in 1976. And I remember being a young child and he was working on this. The documentation was in our home. And then as I grew up, I grew up around Undine Moore was on the faculty at Virginia State, and many of the important composers and artists came through Virginia State. I saw premieres of important pieces. So I had an interest in African-American music, and I had a different view of African-American stories than many of my friends and colleagues, because they didn't know, their textbooks didn't reflect African-American stories.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so my dad was telling us, Crispus Attucks is first to die in the Civil War. And so we're hearing these stories, American Revolution, and others were not. So that piqued my interest when I finally became a musician. I had a circuitous path through medicine, and then I became a pianist. I have 2 degrees in piano and accompanying. Then I became a singer at 25. So I'm a very weird person. But what sparked my interest was University of Michigan's legacy with African-American art song and art music. And so I began a career that I did, traditional singing and opera, oratorio, everything else. But my passion has always been that these stories deserve to be a part of that same canon that I spent so many years working with, and then I taught as well.
Was your family, were you raised in a musical family? Was dad musical, even though he was a historian? Your mom, brothers, sisters?
My father said that his instrument was the radio. It was really embarrassing because he couldn't.
My dad too.
he couldn't carry a tune, unfortunately. My mother was a voice as high as mine and was a color. She didn't know it, but she was an amateur coloratura and would start hymns an octave and a half above everyone else in the congregation. My sister was a violinist. My brother was a violinist. And I started off, I just crawled up, they said, and started playing the piano one day, the Mozart sonatas that I heard on the radio. And then my sister, who studied with
Whoa, slow down. You heard music on the radio, and I thought, oh, here's how the piano works. I'll make that tune happen for me.
That's what my parents said. They said I would do a reduction of what I heard on the radio. If it was a symphony or something, they would hear this little kid tinkling. So they went to Undine Moore, who was teaching my sister piano. And they said the little one is playing. my mother did know enough to play hymns and
Right.
stuff. My mother recognized and said, I don't think the little one is supposed to be able to play symphonies. And Dr. Moore, she later told me, she said, I regret it. I should have taught you. But instead she said, well, just let her come to lessons with her older sister. My sister's 5 years older. I went to the lessons. I would come back and start practicing what my sister was supposed to. My sister would go off and read a book, and I would practice the sonatas that she was supposed to learn.
I love it. She probably took you to her lessons and made you play.
Well, she almost did, but my mother was very dismayed. She said, why isn't Avis progressing? That's my sister. I didn't get very far, but in the meantime,
I thought it was mildly clever to be able to whistle when I was a kid and match tunes, but people that could sit on and play. My mom could do that. My dad, the only time I saw my dad get really excited about music was when Patsy Cline was on the radio. And then he kind of got, damn, that's good. You know? Roderick, any of this craziness fit where you came from? Or were you know, have you guys seen on YouTube what apparently or ostensibly, I have to check it out. I'll check it out in a couple of weeks. A YouTube video of a young child about 4.5 years old conducting quite well in his short pants, something on the radio, and legend has it it's Zubin Mehta's grandson. But I mean, he's got the whole thing, and he's on the right beat, and he's cueing, and he's excited, and he's quieting, and he's doing the. Was that how you were?
No, I mean, no. I don't know. I don't think I was certainly on the level of Zubin Mehta's grandson. I did conduct the action figures in my room. I would line them up, but I thought I was
seriously. Musically, you'd get your action figures and make them do music.
Yes. We would do full concerts. Really, I mean, a sort of playlist, but it was gospel. I mean, I thought I was directing a gospel choir. I mean, my first experiences with music was growing up in the church, and my family. They're not classical musicians or anything, but everyone in the house basically had to be in the choir and at church, and I was always at choir rehearsal, and I just loved to sit and watch my mom rehearse with the choir and then cheer her and the choir on the next day at performances, you know, really critiquing and you know, really nervous when my mom had a solo or choir concerts. I just loved going to the choir concerts. And so those were my experiences. And like Louise, I would listen at the hymns and whatnot, the church hymns, and would play them on the piano by ear at first before I started as a percussionist in elementary school from Macon, Georgia. I'm sorry, Macon, Georgia, home of Otis Redding and Georgia, many great artists from there. But yeah, so I started as a percussionist, and for some reason I chose percussion because my brother was, you know, it seems like the fun thing to do for kids. The first thing is to want to play the drums. You know, we didn't really call ourselves percussionists at the time. And I remember my mom, she clearly didn't know where to get a snare drum or these instruments for for my band class, and this was when we had the J.C. Penney catalog. Do you remember
Oh,
the
absolutely. Are
like
you kidding?
Macy's
Sears,
and J.C.
J.C.
Penney
Penney,
catalogs that you would
Montgomery
get?
Wards. I love it.
And there was a section for the instrument section, and she just ordered a snare drum from the J.C. Penney catalog. So I remember carrying my snare drum in the delivery box to class, and I said,
I
"Mom, I
love
think
it.
I'm supposed to have a case for the instrument." And so eventually I moved to French horn because I just thought that was I got sort of bored being in the back of the percussion section, and because while everyone else is playing their scales and their long tones, the percussionists would just kind of sit there and watch. And so I thought it was really cool to see this circular instrument that not many people played. You know, everyone was on the trumpet or
True.
trombones or tuba, and then there was like only a few players on the French horn. So I was really curious, what is that? I want to play that.
Did you get good at it?
I was pretty good. I played in a amateur orchestra when I was like 18 and 19 years old, the Valdosta Symphony Orchestra. And this was in South Georgia. And this was my first time really learning the orchestral repertoire. I remember playing a lot of these excerpts I'm conducting now, you know, Dvorak cello concerto and Brahms symphonies and everything. So that was really my avenue into this whole world that has continued to expand. And I think, you know, different from Louise, I think my focus on African American music has been more so through the prism of African American artists and performing artists. And I'm still playing catch up in terms of the repertoire and the music, as we've discussed. But, you know, people who really inspired me were, of course, the great vocalists like Jesse Norman and Leontine Price. And I just remember when and I met, you know, very briefly James DePriest before he died, one of the few conductors to be a music director of a major orchestra, the only Black conductor to be a music director of a major orchestra in the US. And he invited me to New York. My first time going to New York was, you know, he was like, "Can you come to New York?" And being from Georgia, it was crazy going to that big city for the first time just to sit down with James DePriest. But for me, it was seeing these artists like Jesse Norman and Leontine Price and Kathleen Battle performing around the world and speaking German and speaking French and Italian. And that inspired me to know that, hey, if Jesse Norman can go from Augusta, Georgia to Berlin and work with the great artists of the world, then you have no excuse. And if they can do that during the civil rights movement and in this more when it was harder to do these things, you really have no excuse. So it was sort of my motivation to kind of navigate through this art form where there aren't many Black conductors at all, and you don't see them. And I just sort of kept my eye on those particular figures of saying, you know, if they could do it, just keep working hard and that will be your path. And so it's been great talking to you and Louise, and now sort of learning more about the repertoire and trying to bring that a little bit more in line and maybe take more of this repertoire on stage with me now as I travel.
Right. I was privileged to sing with Jesse a couple of times, and in fact, I was quite new to this in Salzburg, and we did a Mahler Descartes and Wunderhorn with Abado, which was incredibly exciting. We always had a wonderful relationship. She was an amazing role model. She wrote a book a couple of years before she passed, and by the way, she passed ridiculously too soon. I mean, and apparently, you know, like all death, it just wasn't necessary, but never mind. But she wrote this wonderful book that I haven't read, but I have it. And I think I may never read it because I love holding it and saying, what do you need to read? It's on the title. stand up and sing. And by the way, she means stand up straight, right? I mean, she was amazing. And this role model thing, I wouldn't mind touching on that a little bit, because in two aspects, almost all of my younger colleagues, African-American colleagues that I've talked to, I've had on the show, we've talked about song and singing and so forth, have had as what they talk about pivotal moments in their lives was watching some other African-American singer farther on than they are. Most of them referenced people like Denise Graves, somewhat Kathy Battle, certainly Jessie, but Denise had a powerful impact on the stage world for young Black singers in America. And I've, now that we're going down this project and our project that we're going to talk about a little bit later, I get asked in interviews, why do you think there aren't more Black singers? What is, we've now got in the classical industry and certainly in the opera industry, I don't know of any opera house that doesn't have a lot of Asian singers, so what is it about? I mean, I know this is a touchy subject, that's why I'm kind of dancing around here. I don't want to get, it's not finger wagging and so forth. I'd rather let's turn this question around. I think we are at the cusp of truly a new age. I think we are, honest to God. Thank you. I think we're going to move forward. I think we are in a new realization. We're in a new embracing. We're in a new celebration. Do you guys feel that? Do you think that's true? Louise?
I think we definitely are. And I'll answer a little bit of what you were asking. I think that the reason we haven't seen the faces is because of people's imagination. It's not that there weren't a plethora of singers who were trained, African-American singers who were trained. Universities have been putting things out, putting the students and the singers out. I think that directors maybe could not see it or imagine or didn't know what to do with the faces and the people that were there. And I have optimism that especially as different organizations begin to think about amplifying narratives and telling those stories, that I hope that they will. I mean, it will help them to imagine not only African Americans in those stories, but imagine them in all the traditional works that they've been doing anyway. They've been trained to sing this.
Exactly.
And I mean, when you were talking about pivotal, faces, I remember being a child and seeing a recording of Leontine Price. My parents did take me to opera and they loved it. In fact, for their honeymoon, they went to the Met and saw an opera by Menotti, and I can't remember what it was, but it was whatever was in 1953, I think. Whatever would have been premiering, they were there. 53. But I just think it's I remember meeting Jesse Norman when I was a young student at Michigan. Kathleen Battle had been there a couple of weeks before. Jesse Norman, I won't say anything, and Jesse Norman came, and I was the last one in line. And she was so gracious and so kind to me. I was painfully shy. You wouldn't know it now, but I was painfully shy. And I was only backstage because a bassoonist had to tell me that I should go backstage. I was like, I'm not walking back there. And he's like, come on. And I'm a doctoral student. And I was too shy. And we stood, and she said, come here. And so we sat down and started talking. Her management said, first she sold me a box of Girl Scout cookies, which told me, she said, I'm a scout leader in New York and I have Girl Scout cookies. So as a poor student, you're trying to see, do I have $2 in my pocket? And I will never eat these cookies. My friend said, you're going to eat the cookies before you get out the back door. And he was right. But it was what she said to me, that when her manager said, Miss Norman, it's time to go. You've been standing here. And she said, I'm talking to Louise Toppin, who's going to be a singer one day. Just that empowering statement from somebody who'd never heard me sing.
I love it.
Our conversation. She said, you're going to be somebody.
I love it.
I'm also curious.
Yep.
I'm also curious, Louise. Jessie Norman went to Howard University before she went off to Michigan and whatnot to make her way. And, you know, I'm curious when you think about the history of also these institutions and W.B. Du Bois and so forth, and how the mission for these institutions at first was to get more Black students in these specialized areas of doctors and lawyers and engineers and so forth and so on. And that has been happening, and we still need to see more in those sorts of specialized professions. Mm-hmm. But still, I think a lot of the professional Black musicians who are being, you know, who are choosing a life professionally in classical music, they're a lot of times coming from the conservatories and so forth and so on. I wonder if there could be some way that we now start to that even those institutions start to put a little bit more focus on beefing up those other departments in music to produce more soloists, more instrumentalists, and so forth. Because also, it's important for, like you said, those Black students not only to see themselves on stage, but also to kind of interact with each other a bit, because it becomes a bit lonely when you're the only one. It truly does, until you kind of figure out a way to live in your own skin and walk through this world. But I can tell you, as soon as if I'm in London with Chineke, or I'm at the Sphinx conference and working with that orchestra, and you have, you know, a principal trombone of the Metropolitan Opera who's Black, Weston, and trumpet from the Metropolitan Opera, and these people come together, even though we haven't even really met each other in person, it feels like we've known each other for years for some reason. And it's like, oh, you know, hey, family. And it's like, it's so interesting. And I wonder if we can find more of those communities and within organizations, and we all have to do our part. But
you know, you're speaking to mentorship, number one, that universities, especially the majority ones, still have an issue with being the only. There's one Black professor or one person of color. Quite often, that's still my entire career. I was the first African-American woman at East Carolina. I was the first permanent one at Chapel Hill. Martha Flowers had been at Chapel Hill before me, but I was permanent since 1793.
Wow.
And, you know, so I was walking those spaces alone. I'm the only African-American woman in music right now at Michigan, even though there's other.
Oh, really?
I'm the only one in the music part of SMTD.
Oh, yeah, sure. Our humanities collaborative partnership is, of course, cross-disciplinary.
Right. That's
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So, I mean, that's the thing, is that people don't realize that. And until you have people in positions of power, administrations can, you know, help with having a conscious eye toward, we need to have those spaces. We need to have some mentorship. Don't just bring the students, one student, drop them here, and then what? Where is that connection to the professional world? Why haven't we brought the conductor in to come talk to the conducting students? Why don't we do outreach to the Detroit schools to try to nurture the talent, or to Interlochen and, you know, those different spaces?
Now, but Louise, you're talking about, but I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. But what about music in the schools in general? What about that just for everybody? Because music and literature and art is the great identifier of who we are as people, and who cultures and epochs, and, you know, the whole thing. I mean, I personally think a general rehearsal at a major opera house or a major orchestra that doesn't have kids in it is just a tremendously lost opportunity. Now, I realize it's expensive, and of course, you know, all their insurances, and they got to get them there, and I realize but where there's a will, there's a way. And I get nervous about that.
Well, you know, when I was a child, Virginia actually bused us to the Symphony.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
all went to the Virginia Symphony in Richmond,
Yeah.
Virginia. And so
Mm.
that was kids from not, you know, I don't know how far they came, but they filled that auditorium with little kids. And we had to do that every
Well,
year, all the time.
whatever the answer is, if it's easier to bring the orchestra to the kids rather than the kids to the orchestra, fine, let's do that. If it's easier to take the opera programs to the schools, and I mean, I sang opera, I sang opera scenes in malls in Los Angeles when I was going to USC. So I mean, you know, I mean, you
But
just like I said, where there's a will. Do you guys feel that I mean, I don't want this to be all about sociology here. I want to get some music, but just to no, but it's all part and parcel. And you know what, the road we can't. Well, I'm kind of go down this road just gently, and that is, if a young Black kid wants to become a musician, does he or she have the same development opportunities? Now that's a loaded
no,
question, because generally,
no.
do Black kids have the same opportunities? I mean, you cannot talk about racial injustice in America without talking about financial inequity.
I think
But if you want to tip lightly on that, I mean, do you think let's put it this way, do you think there's a bunch of really talented kids out there that are just not getting off the vine, as it were, to mix my metaphors?
I think
We have to look at, here's the thing, talent has to be developed and cultivated. And to think that, you know, Thomas Hampson has become Thomas Hampson because one day he, you know, just woke up and was able to sing Mahler as one of the best Mahler singers.
That's what happened.
You know, someone saw you had a great voice,
I
and
took the Mahler pill. Didn't you get the Mahler pill? So,
you had someone saw your voice, or you had a great voice, and you had influences and people who taught you about Mahler and said, you know, come, let me take you with me, and so it's been cultivated to what it is today. And Michael Morgan, who's music director in Oakland, said something very interesting to me that I thought about it, because I had a talk with he and Thomas Wilkins and Jonathan Hayward last summer during the whole Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that when you, and you know, I can't say if it's true or not, but there's a point to it that, you know, when you're standing on the podium as an African-American conductor or so forth, the level that you need to be, the expectation is much higher when you're younger, and you can't make as many mistakes, or you're sort of with women as well. Like, you can't make as many mistakes, or you can't do this, or you're sort of thrown out, and not given opportunities again. And so the fact is, one has to have room for growth. You're not, that talent, when you're a 25-year-old aspiring conductor or whatnot, and you conduct the St. Louis Symphony or whatnot, a really good orchestra, it's like, okay, the 25-year-old, okay, let's see him back in 4 years. He wasn't Herbert von Karajan, but let's see him back in another 7 years. And you have that happening with the other counterparts, you know, white counterparts or so forth, where and then by the time that conductor is 40, and the New York Philharmonic is saying, where are the Black conductors? Where are they? There are no Black conductors who are ready to stand in front of us and lead yet. Oh, that guy, he's been developing skills and talent, and it's been cultivated over 25 years of working and giving opportunities. And I think I think that's something, certainly, as Louise was alluding to, there is talent there, and it just has to be cultivated. And you also need mentors to help with that. When I emailed James DePriest as a sort of naive Northwestern student, and he invited me to his apartment in New York, and I went, he sat down with me and basically told me, okay, you need to obviously work as hard as you can, and don't don't take all programs that are just for Black History Month and so forth and so on, and told me how he and his wife basically ate Spam sandwiches so that he can save enough money to invest in his work and to pursue the type of projects he wanted to do. And just hearing that and to see him certainly helped inspire me.
You see what you just said? You had a mentor who helped you strategize.
Right.
And I think about the fact that, going back to the beginning part of your question, is that access to music education was dropped at a certain point. My generation did have it, but the generation after us, music education was cut in the schools. So those people are now adults. Those are the adult parents who may not now take their kids and avail themselves of it. It's extra work to go when you're trying to work 2 jobs to make sure your kids can eat, to then, or even if you're a middle class person, if you weren't exposed to the arts as generation before was, now you've got a harder road to climb in the first place. Then you don't have the mentors, you don't have the people that you're seeing. You've got for instance, African American conductors being stuck as associates and never rise to principal positions. I mean, these are all things that feed into a person's psyche that says you can achieve anything you want. You hear the words, but you don't have the support, the full support that you may see your counterparts getting.
Well, I mean, think about that on a bigger cross-cultural, cross-ethnic line in our politics. Think of how many generations are in the House of Representatives and even senators who never heard any of this stuff as kids. So it's all hobby, it's all elective, it's all over there. Oh yeah, there were kids in my school, but I mean, this is a big problem to get this up to, I mean, I'm over here, I've been in Europe most of the time through the COVID crisis for obvious reasons. You can't fly to America, but never mind. And besides, I'm not sitting in an airplane for 13 hours with potential COVID folks. Just not going to happen. And no fault of theirs. It just doesn't make any sense. Never mind. Another issue. But, as we have all this lockdown and we have all these value judgments and we have this perfect storm of pandemic and then the economic crisis and then the education and, people are starting to wake up. Sorry, I don't mean to be so rude about it, but we're obviously hearing, wait a minute, we've got a whole academic year of 7, 8, and 9-year-olds. What are they going to talk about when they're 15? What are we impacting our kids? But where I really want to go to is, as we start thinking, okay, post-COVID or getting out of COVID, and we're gonna open this up, or we're gonna open this up. And we got to get our businesses going. We've got to get our services and goods going. We've got to go. How long and how many lists of things do we have to go before we get to the arts and letters and performing arts as a kind of nourishment to your soul, your well-being, your world perspective that forms who you are as an individual, as you do your job, as you take care of your kids, as you drive to the soccer game. This is what drives me crazy. And in the American dialogue is this sort of incidental nonchalance about an entire arts industry. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting.
And then you lay that on top of the already inherent problem that there's parts of our society that do not have the same mentors, that do not have the same up-ramps, do not have the same associations. Of course, you're going to have conversations, and thank God we had Black Lives Matter movement. Thank God we had the upheaval that we've had, so that we can really start talking about all the layers of these questions. I'm not talking about the violence. I'm talking about the political problems of it. I'm talking about people, clicking in, and the martyrs that we have lost. Their tragic lives and these obscene murders have, in fact, bumped everything up. And my hope is it's also bumped up the question. I don't even know where to go with all this, guys. Help me, because it's just that's how I came to this idea of this parallel universe. There's always been this conclusion that here's American society going along, and gee, we have these other people in the society, and they do it so well. I guess we'll take them into the mainstream for a while, and then they depart again. I'm talking about the incredible canon of classical music of African American composers and poets. It's an astounding body of work that's lived in parallel anonymity to of course, every European composer of any note has had more listening and more place, and of course they've had much more influence on what we've called American music for most of the 20th century. And it's time for that to stop.
Yeah.
It's just my biggest passion, and my passion about African American music is the day we can talk about American music and American composers and American poets. And somewhere in the conversation, oh, were they Black? Oh, were they Latino? Right. I mean, is that, I'm not trying to be glib about it. Is that too far? I mean, you can't, is that too far? Is that too silly?
I don't think it's pie in the sky or too far. I just think we have a lot of work to get to that point where we talk about all composers, because that takes into account your educational system in incorporating it, and even teaching music history. I've said this on other times. Teaching music history using African American, use Chevalier de Saint Georges as the person you talk about, and then have a Mozart string quartet as the piece that you analyze. Why can't you do it that way, so that you are actually instead of making them parallels that we don't talk about one layer and we talk about the other? Why don't we talk about both layers? But I'm also fascinated by the fact that what is it we always turn to as a society in times of trouble? Look at how much people are watching the arts. People are coming up with podcasts. They're coming up with shows. They're doing performances outside. What is the first thing that a society does? It turns to arts. So in a lot of ways, it's quite, I mean, I've been thinking about that piece too. In a lot of ways, there may have been more access to arts in this moment because people are at home. And even their kids are seeing operas on a Zoom screen and things like that. Will it sustain beyond that and get them to engage in the art? No, there's more work that has to be done to get us to that point. But I hope we can get to a point where it is American music and we don't have to pull a name out, but we recognize that they are still a person of color, that we recognize it as we just know somebody's bio rather than.
Without question. That's what I meant. Am I being
right?
Yeah.
Roderick?
I didn't exactly. I don't want to be silly about it. I want to know the culture it came from, but I wanted to embrace what we are in America, and that is multi-ethnic and pluralistic and together and powerful because of the myriad of roots that we have. I mean, e pluribus unum is not a clever remark. And it's not cookie cutter stuff. It's not that we all become the same thing. Exactly the opposite. It's the power of the difference. But never mind. Do you think that, Robert, when we start getting back up, and I just had a horrible conversation with a major orchestra leader today who has canceled a major festival because the virologists are simply saying, forget about it. You're not going to have shoulder to shoulder sitting in any opera house or any concert house. Not in 2021. It's not going to happen. We'll certainly have concerts. It's going to go forward in some level, but it's just not going to happen. Regardless of that, when we start embracing a concert repertoire again, do you think we have a chance to sort of open the repertoire a bit, or do you think everybody's just going to be clamoring for the Brahms cycle again? And God knows we all love Brahms, but do you understand my question?
Well, I think there's always opportunity, of course, to open up to more repertoire. However, I think one must not assume that we're all playing catch up on what we don't know. As Louise said, just because I'm Black doesn't mean I know the repertoire, and I'm still learning and fascinated because my education was still, at a predominantly white school or white music school where I was taught Brahms, Beethoven, and Bach, and Mozart, and so forth. And so we have to do work there with informing artists. If they have to learn, you know, this sort of symphony or music by Coleridge Taylor and whatnot as part of the repertoire, then they will not start to see it as the other. It's like, okay, we play Brahms, we play Schumann. Who is this that we've never heard of? Blah blah blah. And so we have to then. So it takes us leaving our comfort zone. Also, it takes more than, because we quite frankly don't have enough African American artists or African American conductors to carry this repertoire. It's going to take everyone to work on expanding their repertoire, and I think organizations and opera houses, you know, when they're looking to invite a conductor of note or a soloist of note, just like they have been aggressively saying, we need more women on the program, we need women composers, we need women conductors, and we need women artists. I think that has to be said also when it comes to people of color. And of course, people say, oh, that makes people uncomfortable because it's about, you know, they say, oh, quotas and diversity and inclusion. I thought it's always interesting that people struggle less with having conversations about sex, female or male, versus race. Then it becomes a situation of equality and this and that, and which you know is unfortunate. And so I think by challenging not only arts administrators to search for, you know, if you have if you want to play Tchaikovsky violin concerto and you only know these sorts of artists, you need to search for others. Or if you only, a lot of people,
Right.
they come to me and they say, oh, I've been asked to do music by an African-American composer. I don't know anything. What's out there? What's, you know, and then they have to then do the work. Like I have to do the work, and we all have to do the work. And so we have to do the work to inform ourselves of this repertoire. And so, yeah, I
Well
think there's
put.
an opportunity to do that.
Can I say that
Yeah, Louise.
implicit bias is something we have to recognize. It's just what you said, Roderick, that we go by what we know. And so I hope that we get beyond, we have to look for this repertoire for this 1 month, instead of we are trying to broaden the experience of our seasons because we want to
Right.
include all members of our community and
Right.
let them see themselves reflected in a composer. Not it's relegated to, and the other point is the allyship that you said. African Americans cannot carry all of it, as you absolutely said. African
No.
Americans don't know the repertoire either, because I did the same thing. I went to University of North Carolina, Peabody Conservatory, Michigan. My repertoire was the same as yours and every other person in this country, but broadening beyond that, that's where we as institutions have much more work to do to expand the canon we're teaching, to
Right.
expand the ensemble experiences in opera and orchestra and chamber and everybody. Doesn't mean all of a sudden
Right.
throw out everything you've done, but it does mean being thoughtful in your inclusion of other perspectives. So that's just mine.
Could I say
No,
before
I
you
think
go?
you guys.
I was going to say, posing the question differently, it ought to, like how we've been working on our planning, just saying, instead of saying someone find a composer, a female composer, and let's program that, because you find an African American piece and we program that, you have then this sort of that just doesn't feel right. To say to an artist or to say to an administrator or whatnot, we'd like to compose. We'd like to program more music by Black artists. Could you bring us a symphony by a Black artist that you love, that you're passionate about? And that immediately changes your psyche in your approach to this music. It's like, oh, I need a piece.
Yeah.
No, I need a piece that I believe in. I need a
Right.
piece that I like
Right.
and that I enjoy. And then you will do it again. You will be encouraged to take this music and put it in your repertoire and enjoy it. And that is good for all of us. That's good for music.
I think what you just said, we have to have those conversations so people find the repertoire that they can enjoy, because so many people are intimidated by, I've had no exposure. I don't, but nowadays there's so many resources. There's so much. I like the way you just said that. I'm getting ready to do a conversation for the American Symphony Orchestra League on Friday. I'm leading a panel, and that's what we're talking about to the administrators. And I think conductors may be in there too, but it's about talk about, I mean, that's one of the questions I framed, is talk about a piece you're really passionate about. Tell us something by a Black composer. Talk about it. Share it with the group so that we're all on the same page.
The heavy lifting has to come from inside our industry.
Yeah.
The heavy lifting certainly has to come from the schools, as you said, the music schools. And it's on both sides. It's not just the African American community, it's also the white community, because we've got to get past this. When I did my Chicago record a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time talking to Daryl Taylor, and I said, are people going to shoot me? Am I allowed to do this? I want to sing The Negro Speaks of Rivers. I think it's a wonderful song. It's a fabulous poem. I love that. He said, oh God, yes, you've got to do this. I remember, 15 years ago when I was on tour with Song of America, and I did a recital in Detroit, in that wonderful opera house or concert house, a beautiful, beautiful place. And I sang some Grant Still and songs. And afterwards, a wonderful couple came up to me, happened to be a gay couple, and they were talking about songs and so forth. And the one man said to me, do you sing spirituals? And I just looked at him and said, am I allowed? And he was a man of color. And he said, if you don't, meaning white people, not just me, Thomas Hampson, but if you don't, how is everybody going to get to know them? This is fantastic. We talked about it. I grew up in a fundamentalist Protestant religion. We sang everything, and of course, we sang a lot of the gospels and the spirituals of the time, and so I grew up on it. It was quite wonderful. But what I'm really driving at is that we all need to be inventive and respectful about where this and how this material is sung and performed, and that it's remembered because of its quality and its truth in the story of American culture and life, and not just the gratuitous piece or the nominal gesture. So we're all on the same page here. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity to look at some websites. I'm going to quickly, ladies and gentlemen, take you on a screen sharing adventure. We're not going to hear anything, but I do want you, please tell me I'll be able to find this. Where is it? Here we go. All right. This, I'm sure, Louise, you're going to recognize this in a heartbeat. How's that? This is your African Diaspora Music project. Can you all see that? Are you seeing that? It's a beautiful website, and talk about putting your money where your mouth is. And that's such a rude phrase, but we're going to use it anyway. This is a who's who of performers and thinkers, historically and contemporarily, and it's a wonderful collage of people. This is a wonderful music project, compilation of original works by composers in the African diaspora. All research associated with this project is owned and presented by Dr. Louise Toppin and Vidimus. So I'm going to turn the page and go to the about, and I'm not going to go to you because people should go listen to anybody. But here's our vision. Can you? And then I actually want to go into the search field. Can you give us a quick blush what we're looking at?
Yeah. So this is just talking about why we chose to do this, and mainly we're trying to create this repository, provide access, encourage research, and assist students and professionals. And so I founded a competition with Georg, and that's what sort of stimulated the need for students to be able to find the repertoire, but it's been important for all. And if you can click on the tab that says search.
Exactly. This is where it gets really fun, ladies and gentlemen. You want to check this out. This is serious stuff. What should I do?
Just type baritone where it says voice type. up
All
there.
right. So I'll put in baritone here.
Yeah, just start typing the word bear, B-A-R, and then
There
look
he
down
is.
at the bottom.
There's a baritone voice poet or what?
You don't even have to put anything else for a second. If you just put that and go down to the bottom, it starts populating everything we have by baritone, and you can see it has.
Oh, look at that. Look at that highlighted baritone. I love it. So we just go to the next page. And we got to the next page. I love it.
It's
Robert Owens, we should talk. He's a wonderful conversation. And of course, we went past Leslie Adams, one of my absolute favorite contemporary composers of song. So you get the idea, ladies and gentlemen. You can, yeah, go ahead.
We did this so that if you don't know anything, but you know your voice type or you know a poet you want, you can create a program. If you know a composer specifically, can you click on Leslie Adams up there at the top? If you click on one of the composers, where it says Adams.
So I put in Langston, I put in Hughes, and of course we have here, right?
All right. Well,
now we can also go to Leslie. Let's go to Leslie.
Okay.
We're going to Leslie Adams.
I want them to see a record page. So if you go on Leslie Adams, then you have a bio of the composer. And if you click on the first song, Avocation, down there.
So here you get the poet is it's Suzanne Hassler. It's a medium high voice. Here's the range, yeah.
You get the information, especially people want to know, is it a spiritual or not? Is it female? So we have things like that. And we're going to add, we're working on the sound clips, so they'll be there soon.
Yeah.
And have the first page of a song so you can see a composer's handwriting. So it's
would this link go to Leslie Adams' webpage or what? Or just another biography of him?
Yeah, it's just a longer biography and it's showing the source where we're taking the bio from. But the orchestral page is going to work very similarly. It'll have a place where people can submit repertoire that they're also learn and be vetted, and then we can add it into it. But it's under construction right now as we speak, the orchestral part of it.
It's a wonderful site.
We're doing piano.
And by the way, if you happen to find yourself on the Hampson Foundation site, we have a link for you.
I know. Thank you for that.
Oh, don't be silly. We are just big fans at the foundation. Several years ago, I said, we're not building a silo, we're building an aggregator. You know, if you're on the Hampson website and Song of America, and you're into a song and you're into a poet, and you click on the poet's name on that song, we're going to send you to that poet and that poetry. We're not going to send you to some ubiquitous page. We want to help. We want to build a study dashboard, but that's another question. This is just, I have absolutely gone down Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole on this page, on this website. It is just too much. It's really just too much fun.
Thank you very much.
And you can just go, really? you can, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, it's just, and what I love, and thank you for doing that, is because all of us are ignorant of something, and you may just know enough to be dangerous, and that's all you need to know. If you simply know what kind of voice you are, you're going to have something, and you're going to go into information, you're going to listen about composers, and immediately, if you have that on one browser window, open up on your split screen, IDAGIO.com, and you're going to find an awful lot of this stuff on the streaming platform of IDAGIO.com. You might have to go some other places as well, but we're getting better and better about more and more composers. Probably obscure things are a little bit hard to find, but you'd be surprised how many of these songs are immediately listenable on IDAGIO.com to get to know composers and get to know their language. And yes, H. Leslie Adams is somebody you really need to know. If you love song, you're going to love this guy. Now, as long as we're here, why don't we skip over here to Roderick Cox, which has one of the most beautiful splash pages I've seen in a long time. You know, tell me about this baton.
Oh, the baton. Okay. It was made by, this is the first time I've received a question like that. It's made by Chris Blount, who from Custom Batons in Minnesota, and he makes batons in his garage, and he he made that one for me, and I would pop over from Minneapolis and have that crafted.
But I love the design of the handle. Of course, I know conductors like to get their own batons and the weight of them, the feel of them, and I get it. I've dared myself to have a baton in the hand once or twice, and it makes it these knobby things. I don't know how people get used to those. It make me crazy, but never mind. It just seemed really, really beautiful. If you want to get to know about this guy, you want to do that. You want to check out the especially the videos. The press is so disgustingly positive. I wouldn't read it, and I hope you don't read it. What I love Dustin Hoffman's quote on press: "A good critic or a good critique is a stay of execution." It's coming for you somewhere. Anyway, your performance schedule, which I don't even want to talk about because I don't like to see grown men cry. But I thought, I lost 92% of my calendar. I can't imagine it's not very similar nonsense, but it is what it is. Now you've got this RC initiative. Please tell us about that. You're a young man at the beginning, and yet you already have a music. And as much as I like the phrase giving back, I refuse to give back anything. I'm keeping it all. But I will pass it on. And I love to pass it on. Never mind, I'm just kidding. Tell me about your music initiative, Roderick. I love it.
Well, this started, it kind of started by a mistake at first. When I was a student at Aspen, at the Aspen Music Festival, a friend and filmmaker, Diane Moore, came up to me, and she wanted to kind of film my progress as a student and follow my life as like taking auditions and trying to win jobs and all of that. And as you know, you don't want any cameras with you in an audition room because you don't know if you'll win the job, first of all. And so I was very much opposed to this idea. But then later she said, not only is it important to tell your story and so that young people can see it, just like we spoke before about James DePriest and so forth and other mentors, but also we want to create a scholarship fund. So not only are you able to inspire young people to pursue classical music, but also you can aid them with funds because it's quite expensive. And I was fortunate as a kid to receive a scholarship from the Otis Redding Foundation in Macon, Georgia, which bought me my first French horn. And I was able to go off and pursue music more seriously. And so my scholarship fund is basically there to provide young people with many of the necessary essentials, like a new bow or paying for for them to participate at a prestigious festival, like at the Interlochen Music Academy in the summer, or the Sphinx Academy, just to get that extra funding needed to pursue classical music at this more advanced level. And so this was created, and for 2 years we've given out $35,000 to over 17 students, and we'll continue this year. And so
I mean, look, I love this. It's 12th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. I mean, in my world it takes a little bit longer for singers to find themselves, but we had 10 singers in Berlin 3 weeks ago, and 7 of them were under the age of 30. And they were damn good. And I mean, damn good. And a couple of them are just the new lead singer. I can sleep well at night knowing that the lead is in good hands. All right, we're going to have to close off here pretty soon. You guys have been really generous with your time. We're having this, ladies and gentlemen, is the splash. Well, it's not the splash page. This is a page of IDAGIO.com. And as you can see, Samuel Coleridge Taylor is a very important, albeit a Brit composer of color and wonderful, wonderful composer, mostly known for his piano pieces, but he was he was an enormously significant symphonist. And I pulled up this splash page because then we can just talk a little bit before we go. Why you see the three of us giggling and carrying on here is that we actually have a plan afoot. We are going to make a project together the end of May, knock on wood, God willing. it will come together, and under the direction of Christoph Lieben at the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, we are going to have a 3-concert series called Song of America, Black Music Matters. And for the orchestral pieces in the orchestral concert, Roderick will be our conductor, and for everything around, above, and beyond, with me, by me, linked arm in arm, as well as singing arm in arm on stage, and all preparing will be Louise Toppin, which I'm so grateful that you've come into this project. We're having wonderful discussions about repertoire. One of the pieces that I think if we can do it, we really want to do is the Taylor Coleridge violin orchestra or violin concerto. I think we're pretty gung-ho on the William Dawson Negro Symphony. We've got some, Mr. Hailstork is still with us, alive and well, and he's written some wonderful songs on texts of Martin Luther King Jr. We're at the beginning of this rather wonderful project. It will be the last week of May. The Bremen Deutsche Philharmonie, I think they're called, is going to be the orchestra. The other one evening will be very focused on the European relationship to American literature, seen through the eyes of African-American composers and poets, and somewhat in translation. We'll be looking at, Zemlinsky and Grosch and Kurt Pallen, who I knew quite well in Switzerland. I sang, by the way, his Langston Hughes poetry in German in my American project a while back in Salzburg. So stay tuned, and the collection of forces and passions that are going to make this a very exciting night and a celebration of music that I'm sure most of it you've never heard. You may have heard of it. I think will be important. And the point is celebration. The point is not finger wagging. The point is forward thinking, ecumenical embracing of what all the arts do, in my opinion, and that is tell you you're not alone. And I don't care what color you are, you're a human being first. Does that make sense? Can you go with that?
Absolutely.
Can I get an amen? Anyway, it's been wonderful visiting with you guys. You guys, anything else you want to leave us with? Any other thoughts?
It's all about sharing collectively.
It's all about sharing, isn't it? Okay, so what's your favorite piece?
Right now, it's the Dawson Negro Symphony. I've been listening to that every day, really. It's kind of crazy. Too. Every day I've been listening to that. Actually,
I've been listening to Coleridge Taylor because I didn't know it.
Oh.
And I was listening to it in the car, and then I'm now hearing my better system today, and I had it going. The problem is it completely derails my work because I sit here going, So if I got things to do, I'm not going to conduct it. But I can't study. I can't play the violin to save my life. So it's just an admiration thing of which I can only have a short amount of time. But what else are you working on in some of the other pieces in the other repertoire, the other part of your life that you're working on, Roderick?
Well, right now I'm in Montpellier, France, and we're doing a concert. Yes.
You made it down there. Fantastic. I didn't actually identify. You're in Montpellier.
Yes, I'm in a hotel room and so forth. And there's a 6 o'clock there's a 6 o'clock curfew. So we have to be inside.
Louise's Glacé. So you've got to go to Louise's ice cream. I took a picture of it because I was there.
I love it.
Okay, I will do that. But basically, I'm doing John Adams' Dr. Atomic Symphony. Do you know the opera?
I saw this. I saw both premieres in Chicago and in San Francisco.
Yeah, and I'm doing Barber Essay No. 2 and George Walker Lyric for Strings and the Jennifer Hickton Violin Concerto. And then I'm working on a project with the Detroit Symphony doing Brahms Serenade No. 2, Mozart Violin Concerto, and Ravel Le Tombeau de Couperin, and then going to San Francisco Opera. We're going ahead in March and performing in April. I know you're surprised.
Wow.
But we are doing Barber of Seville. and we're working on it right now. I
know that piece.
I give all credit to the San Francisco Opera, because they are so dedicated to do this, and it surprises everyone to see it happen. And so that's why I think it's so important. But it's going to be a drive-in opera.
I love it.
So people will drive and park their cars and watch it and listen. But we're going to have Larry Brownlee, and it's an all-star cast. And we have to, because of COVID, we're going to do about 90 minutes of it, not the whole thing. But I say, we just gotta do something. We gotta go for it. We gotta be flexible.
Absolutely.
And we have to be ready to roll with the punches. So I applaud them for doing that, and I'm excited to do the project.
Oh, that sounds
Louise, other than the humanities collaboratory things that we keep meeting each other online and so forth, what's on your plate right now? What do you can you please tell us about the exciting project you're just about to launch and publish? Hello, the book you showed me last week. Come on.
A book plug.
You have Margaret Bond's songs that have never been seen come to light. And you told me there's even more of them?
There are some more, 245 pages worth in this volume. And I just remembered another source that I could have checked, so I'm trying not to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm working. You going to say something?
I was just going to say, Thomas, a lot of this stuff is still just kind of popping up. What's her? Chi-Chi Nwanaku just told me that Samuel Coleridge Taylor family said they still have a box of music that needs to be scour through and whatnot. And so this is exciting.
Another, I can't open up this can of worms, but there's this parallel of just like that going on in Vienna called Exilarte, in which, band killed, family, but the composers and their second generation after them are, they're in the attic and they got boxes of manuscripts of Uncle Huda Huda, and what do we do with this? And we take it on. I'm also part of the project. We've got storage facilities, and Michael Haas's and Guba, Professor Guba from the University of Vienna. It's recapturing cultural legacy. It's exactly the same thing in America. And Louise, of course, that's what this whole website is about. And the diaspora, even the word diaspora just goes, yeah, okay, I get that. I know where that's coming from. So what else? Tell me, what else you on?
I was going to say, I hope that this moment is going to bring us all to doing that. So I'm working on volumes of piano repertoire. We're doing a proposal for Oxford Press for that. My choral piece by Margaret Bonds that we discovered, that's being published now by Hildegard Press. So I'm doing a lot of printing of music. Undine Moore's song collection, all of those is being done. I've been asked about doing a radio show of African-American music to start for this month, but to expand and perhaps syndicate. Doing some stuff like that. Still, singing, of course, my career, like everybody else, just kind of went in pause. And so a bunch.
I was complaining about that to Brigitte Fassbender 2 weeks ago in Berlin. I said, well, my calendar. And she looked at me and said, think of it as Urlaub, a vacation for your voice.
Yeah.
I said, you're absolutely right.
So that's what I've got, a bunch of premieres stacked up that I was supposed to sing, and the music's just sitting there. And a lot of it was written for me. So that's what makes it even worse, is that I can't sing it because I can't sing it until something happens. I'm trying to finish a CD of Hale Stork, finishing a CD with Daryl Taylor of vocal chamber music. At least we've recorded it. So we've recorded that, but we now have to release. And so I'm doing a lot of projects to fill in gaps, but also I've just been doing a lot of conversations at universities across this country in master classes, some just talking about how do we talk about race, how do we engage with this music. And really it's giving people permission to do what they've done with every other repertoire. As you know, when they studied German repertoire, they studied it, they learned the language, they learned the culture, and then they performed it rather than just picking up a piece of music. And so it's doing that and helping them to navigate what it means to pick up music by a new culture for you and use the same process you've already been trained in your education.
Exactly.
Teaching them to explore all over the world that there's repertoire that needs a champion. And I love it when people call me and say, I'm looking at music from this island way off in this part of the world, and I say, great. I look forward to hearing, never heard that language, never heard of these people. I'll be the first one looking to buy your book on how to pronounce all consonants, in these songs. So
fantastic. It's going to be a wonderful project in May. It's wonderful to get to know you better, Louise. I admire you and everything we can do at the Hampson Foundation to empower you. That's my new motto: empower, enable, and embrace. That's how I see my younger colleagues, and also this repertoire. And thank you so much for taking the time out in your busy schedules and visiting with us, ladies and gentlemen. As the title goes, Song and Beyond. We certainly went beyond tonight, but I thank you for the illuminating conversation, the wonderfully candid perspectives that we want to offer. It's only with openness and candidness that we can face a bright and, please God, post-COVID future so as soon as possible. Stay safe, stay well. See you all next week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Song and Beyond, IDAGIO.com. Bye-bye.